Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great time in this fourth day of SINFO. Next up, we'll have a talk from Fernando Macedo, a software engineer at EA Sports. Let's give it up for him, please. I'll give you the word now.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Fernando Macedo, and I'm a software engineer. I'm going to present what it takes to maintain software engineer's perspective on live service games. So, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be defining what is a live service game. And basically, it's a game that's designed to be continuously updated and maintained after it has been made available to the general audience or the target audience, offering regular content updates, bug fixes, and community engagement. The key aspects of this is that it will include soft launches and early accesses, because it has been made available, and but will exclude alphas, betas, and expansions. So a little bit about me. My name is Fernando Macedo. I'm a software engineer at EA Sports, and I've been working in game development since 2014. I started my professional career in Miniclip, where I worked, among other things, on Soccer Stars and Top-Down Golf. I've also briefly worked at Relic Entertainment, where I worked on Company of Heroes 3. And then I moved on to EA Sports, where I worked on EA Sports FC 24, and now I'm working on 25. So, a little bit about EA Sports. It was founded in 1992 as a division of Electronic Arts. Just the FC development division alone has over 1,000 employees, so you can imagine how big the company is. And has various locations around the world, but EA Vancouver is the main home for the FC franchise. A little bit of the chronology of games. 1988, first John Madden Football, very important, still not under the EA Sports. 1990 PGA Tour Golf, 1991 first NHL Hockey. 1993, very important year, first FIFA, already under the EA Sports brand. 2000 F1, 2005, also a very important year, first FIFA Street. I really like this game. 2014, EA Sports UFC. 2022, last game with the FIFA brand, FIFA 23. And 2023 onwards, rise of the EA Sports FC brand with 24 and then 25. So here's the launch trailer for FC 25, which should have sound. Okay, so that was the trailer. When I entered EA Sports, I went to the live team, which main responsibilities is managing updates with the timelines and the content that goes into the regular update, the patches, updating the database, and also releasing set patches, monitoring such releases, looking out for bugs, performance issues, and of course feedback from the players. Some stabilization work, bug fixing, and firefighting, which is pretty much also bug fixing, but for very important bugs or bugs that are blocking our normal flow of work. And of course, some feature work, new features, and changes to existing features. Then I moved on to a team that's called FUTCD. And Ultimate Team is a game mode inside FC. And CD stands for Continuous Development. And what it is a smaller and agile team which aims to address feedbacks and opportunities from before launch to even after launch. So it's focused more on features and less on stabilization work. Here's a couple of features I was involved in as a client. First on top left is a form in Friendlies. Live Friendlies is a game mode, and it used to have a shared value that to matchmake. And with this, now it has its own value for matchmaking. On the top right, this division placement. It's new in FC 25 as well. Basically, the first time that you enter Rivals, which is a game mode in Ultimate Team, you will get, based on your previous game records, you'll get placed into a further division. Down here on the bottom left, you have the partial evolution. With the evolution system, we added some caps for specific bonuses, which allow us to be less stringent on requirements for evolutions, allow us to make more varied type of evolutions. Finally, right here, the squad builder. It was a revamp this year as well. This one was made post-launch, I believe. And it's basically, the squad builder just helps you build squads for various things that you do around the game. And last but not least, the revamp to the player pick system. It was a visual revamp, but also a functionality revamp. We added the possibility to have more than 5 cards to pick from, to pick more than 1 card out of the 5 cards, and also to pick cards that are not players. So now you can pick any kind of items. So what are the most common changes made on live service? Bug fixes, of course, database updates, A/B tests, and feature work. Let's start with bug fixes. Crashes, I think everyone's familiar with crashes. It's basically when the game encounters a fatal error, can't move forward, can't recuperate, and then shuts down. And ANR stands for application not responding, and it's basically a hang. They're the same thing. And ANR is used mostly on mobile. And it's basically when the game doesn't respond to the input of the player for long enough. Usually, the player will then restart the game. Wrong and unexpected behavior as well. It's like, for example, if you have a button and it's supposed to light up an item, for example, you press the button, the item doesn't light up. It's wrong behavior. Visual issues, it can go with the wrong and unexpected behavior. I chose to leave it at a class of its own because there's so many. For example, as an example, you can have like an animation playing, and after the animation, the whole screen dims for some reason. I had to fix a bug like this, and it was fairly interesting. Database updates. So what kinds of things can we achieve with updating the database? You can add or update any of the items in the games, can add or update any structured feature content, which is, in a sense, any type of content that's prepared to be changed by the database. And that can include things like season passes, or mini games, or seasonal content. So for example, if you have a game mode that's only for Halloween, you can then trigger it on and off through a database update. Of course, you can add and update any visual and audio files. They're prepared to do so. And with that, you can do, for example, for, I don't know, Valentine's Day, you can change your main menu theme for Valentine's Day if you want. And you can do that fairly easy. The reason that this database update is a category of its own It's because it's a fairly easy change to do compared to some others. And of course, updating other internal values that can affect gameplay, but not only that, can affect all kinds of features, and start or end A/B tests. And A/B tests, you can think of A/B tests as a tool for choosing, to help you choose a certain, any kind of thing, in a sense. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a game, it's been running for a few years, and the storefront has an icon that you really want to refresh the visuals. But you're not sure how your player base is going to take it. Is the new icon going to transmit the same information as the previous one? Will it lead the player to be interested in the game and installing it? I don't know. So what can I do? I can create different versions of icons that I think are really cool. And then I segment the population into various groups, and one for a control group, which I don't do anything. And for the various groups, I show them exclusively the new icons. And then I compare the metrics. Are the new icons having more engagement? Is it transmitting the message of the game that I wanted to transmit? And depending on it, I just pick the one that I feel it's best, which could be the control, and put it for everyone. It's a very useful tool for a multitude of things, and it's used a lot. Finally, feature work. So making changes to current features, adding or removing functionality. The important thing, the distinguishing thing from the database updates is that these usually involve changing code. And there's this type of changes that cannot be done through the database, alone at least. And of course, adding new features, which is not as common. But when I say not as common here, is in the sense that, let's say you want to have a weekly release schedule, and most of the times a new feature isn't going to take you a week to do. It's going to take longer. So in most patches, you won't find a new feature. And that's the sense that it's not as common. Of course, changing anything on the live game comes with some risks. And the whole point of us as software engineers for live service games is to manage this risk as much as possible. One of the things that can happen is having knock-on bugs. So you fix one crash, and then 3 others pop up with your fix, and that's never a good thing. You can, of course, break the balance of your game. You can break the current functionality. And of course, you can negatively affect player sentiment towards the game. So what does it take to maintain? One of the things that I like to start with is planning. These are just some things I want to highlight. It's not at all everything, but project management frameworks. You have Scrum, which is very popular, but we have also other things like Kanban or Waterfall. This section would make a presentation all of its own, so I won't stay here too long. There's the deliverables. There's the things that we actually deliver, either intermediary or final. So one of the things that we do deliver a lot is documentation. It's basically the pathway from a feature that starts as an idea and ends up in your game. So basically, the designer has an idea and writes a document explaining what the idea is. Then the production team takes that document and creates a change list of things that need to be changed in the game in order to complete that idea. Then the tech team grabs the change list and makes a plan for how to change things in the game in order to make the changes happen. And finally, QA takes everything and generates a test plan in order to make sure that we maintain the quality and also it does not have any further impact on the game. Presentations and demos, also intermediary, usually deliverables, mostly for checkpoint meetings or milestones. We usually have like a presentation or a demo of things working. And last but not least, submitted code. About scheduling and timelines, here we come to the concept of logs. It's a very simple thing. If you want to have a weekly release schedule, that means that at some point you have to stop adding new things in, right? Because you have to stop adding things to then stabilize and get it ready to ship. And that's essentially what a lock is. So it's a sort of a date in which past that date we stop adding things for the release and we start just working on stabilizing it and getting it ready to launch. There are more logs. This is the most basic one, but that's the idea. Milestones, basically, just intermediary checkpoints. When you create a big feature, usually it's good to have some intermediary checkpoints in order to check the progress of the feature, see if we're going in the right direction, and that's what milestones are for. Time off. Time off is very important to keep track because you have to know who you can count on for every release. Because if something goes wrong, there has to be people there to react to it. So if everyone takes time off at the same time, it begins to be very difficult. And finally, the patch dates as well have to be all scheduled, all put on the calendar. Meetings and team synchronization. So I talked a little bit about the checkpoint meetings. There are also sometimes when needed, there's meetings for reviewing code, for reviewing the test plans, and every kind of deliverable. There can be a meeting that doesn't have to always be a meeting. Sometimes, if very important, for some specific changes, there needs to be approval. And sometimes that also requires a meeting. And finally, metrics and KPI. That's for basically self-improvement of the team. We check the metrics of the game, we check the metrics of our team, and KPI stands for key performance indicators. So it's a type of self-evaluation of our flow and how we're doing. Speaking a little bit about mentality, important thing to highlight here is live service, if you're lucky, can be a very long process. So it's usually good to think of it more like a marathon. If you sprint all the way, you're going to burn yourself out really quickly, and you want to be there for the long haul. So you have to know when to speed up, when to slow down, and when to keep pace. The mentality around code reviews is also very important for me. You have to balance accepting input that comes and also defending your solution. And for me, the best way I found to do it is to understand what decisions led you to create that solution and what are the trade-offs that those decisions generated. And with that, you can always analyze the input against your trade-offs and make a judgment call. It's very important to understand the need to know the code base because specifically for live services, it goes to the next point, which is risk management. The more that you know your code base in generally, even if not deeply, it will help you identify the areas in which are at risk when you change it. So identifying the impact areas can help then QA to do a proper job of testing and will reduce risk. And speaking of risk, one of the things that we have to consider is the long-term vision versus the short-term fixes. Sometimes we need the fix for tomorrow or very soon, but we find out that we can't do the fix without properly, without refactoring, changing the purpose of a subsystem or something like that, and that can take a lot of time. So what we can do, a tool that we have, is sometimes, doesn't always happen, but sometimes we can do a uglier kind of fix, like something that we wouldn't put it towards permanently, and then schedule to be actually fixed properly on a later date. So we go for the momentary requirements, but we always remember to actually properly fix it. Because of the second thing, you have to plan for the integration. Every code that you write will join a huge code base, and it will eventually be legacy code for someone. Every code that you submit, even for yourself, you can be reading it like 6 months from now, a year from now, and then you're not in the same headspace as you were, and you have to think about that. Because if it's too complicated or if it's not well done, it can just add to the static, and it makes your job much harder to maintain the game. Also, continuous improvement. It's just generally a good mentality to have. We always, not just yourself, but your code and your team, always want to improve, always be looking out for opportunities. About skills, of course, it almost goes without saying, knowledge of the programming language is very important. But I want to highlight specifically some other skills, namely modularity, which is basically isolating your changes. So as much change as you have, if you can just isolate them, it will make it much easier in the future to just change things without affecting other areas, which will make your life much easier and less risky every time that you have to change things in the game. Debugging is very important as well. You have to learn how to debug, reading logs, work with breakpoints. It goes with the other point as well, documentation. Documentation isn't just writing 60-page documents for everything that you do. Documentation can be a well-placed comment or a log that will not overwhelm your final log, but will give you just the right information for you to understand what's going on without looking at the code. It can be an assert, and sometimes, yes, it will be documents that you produce. There's a need to keep security in mind for some changes, because in truth, there's always going to be people trying to exploit the changes that you do, and you have to be aware of it and work with your team to mitigate when possible. Teamwork and communication, of course. Legacy code handling. I spoke a little bit about legacy code, but in essence, it's just old code that's lost a little bit of the context. And with huge code bases, it's something of an inevitability. You just will run into code that no one has the context for it anymore. So that's why, at this point, documentation is important. It's also good to refresh the code when possible, and if not, also isolate it a little bit so it can not affect multiple areas. That's also something we can do. And finally, cross-disciplinary knowledge is also a skill very useful to have. So for example, if I'm talking with someone for the server side, and I know a little bit about server infrastructure, it will be that much easier of a conversation when we're talking about solution. Same thing with QA. If I know a little bit about how the test plans are made, what they think about when they create the tests, and how they go about testing, a conversation with QA would be that much easier. It would be that much easier to explain, look, I need this other area here tested because in the code I see that they link, even though in the game sometimes it looks like it doesn't. Speaking a little bit about the team can be arbitrarily small or big, but usually there's a core team which you will work with every day, and a more case-by-case basis. So software engineers, the client-server model is very popular, so you usually find client engineers and server engineers. Quality assurance, production, design, and release manager. Those are all core team people. These people you will work with every day. But then depending on what changes you're making, you'll probably talk with core technology software engineers or very feature-specific software engineers, audio, art, technical artists, business intelligence, legal, the list does go on. It can be a lot of people. So in the behavior, I'd like to separate them with team and personal. Team behavior, and this of course is not all of the behavior, but it is some that I like to highlight. It's always important to monitor your tools for detecting downtime, bugs, and performance issues. Always be aware. Create and monitor tests for validating common changes, so they don't have to be done manually all the time. Stage rollout for features. This is really common in mobile, but stage rollout essentially is just rolling out the feature for a small percentage of your player base and then increase it over time. This is done also for stabilization, but there's some technical reasons as well why it's a good thing to do at some points. On the personal level, leveraging code reviews, for me, it's very important. Code reviews are an essential tool that we have to make the game better and make ourselves better. Find the experts in the area of the codes that you're changing, and you more often than not will learn something. And of course, learn to understand the possible impacts. Mitigating risk is almost the name of the game here. Follow best practices for coding. Write readable code, document code as appropriate, adhere to your coding style or standard set by the studio. Doesn't always happen, but it's better to know the rules and to know when to break them. Finally, learn how to manage the risk of your changes. Communicate possible risks that you think, develop mitigation strategies. It's always good to come with the problem and the solution as well. It's always a good thing to do. And always justify your choices. Finally, tools. This is not a complete list, but these are all tools that I've worked with in a professional setting. So for test management, mainly Jira, but also Trello and Miro on some occasions. For communication, Slack or Teams, then Zoom and Outlook, IDEs, Visual Studio, Xcode, and Android Studio. For version control, Git and Perforce. For continuous integration, Jenkins. Monitoring, Datadog, Firebase Scratchlytics, and Google Play and App Store consoles. And finally, for every niche problem, there's usually a niche tool as well. So there's heaps and heaps of custom tools, usually for database management, debug, automation, etc. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fernando. We will now take any questions that you may have. Yeah.
Hello, Fernando. Thank you so much for coming
Hello.
to SINFO. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
So you've started working on EA Sports during the EAFC 24 phase.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've worked directly in this team, but in EAFC 24 there's been a huge database update for the women's football. So could you tell me a bit of that process? Was it hard? Did EA have to hire a big team of people to do this update? How was it like to update a massive database with a lot of new players and even game faces for women? Thank you.
Yeah. So, first of all, I arrived afterwards, but I do know about some things that were made specifically. For software engineers, most of the work actually comes in relating the new data, the new entries, the new players, with the rest of the game. So, for example, there's a system in the game for chemistry between teams and nationalities, and we have to add the new players, the new teams for nationalities, because sometimes you have like different teams with different names, but they're actually the same team, and those should work together in chemistry, for example. So those things have to be added. I didn't talk about it, but sometimes there's also a specific team that adds content, and so if it's a database update, usually that would be the team that would do it, just adding content to the game. What we as software developers do is process the data, display the data, store the data. We usually handle it, the database entries, and make them work with the game.
So if no one has any questions, we'll be moving Fernando to our second stage in a bit, and you can have, more one-on-one type of conversation with Fernando. We will roll our keynote winner now. Bruna Castro. Está aqui dentro, Bruna. Bruna, podes vir aqui, por favor. Sim, sim, sim. And one more round of applause for Fernando.